Welcome to Mastering the Drop, a real view of recovery with me, your host, Master Addiction Specialist, Tricia Parido. You are in the right place if you have battled any chemical addiction, struggle with your relationship with food, consistently shop impulsively, are a chronic people pleaser, can't survive without your morning visit to the gym, or any other habit that is holding you hostage. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Mastering the Drop, a real view of recovery. And today, you know what? Today's a really big treat because I really am feeling moved, touched, drawn, compelled to just get down to the nitty-gritty and talk real life, right? Real life, what we know we're sitting in and moving through. And I couldn't think of a better guest to have to come in and have this conversation with me other than Matt. Matt's been here before. Matt has shared his story, and Matt's, mission and passions are so in alignment with mine that I just know that we're going to have a conversation that will allow everybody to hear, sense, feel whatever it is that they need in this moment to help them feel comfortable, to feel confident, and to feel secure in the fact that they are able to sit in and move through the uncomfortable, the unpreferred that comes when we make that determination that change is necessary and the time is now. And fear is just really that big, huge block. Anyway, Matt, if you don't mind, just share again with everybody a little bit about yourself, because we don't want them to feel like they have to go back to the last episode that you were on and just to hear your bio.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, for having me on. First off, Tricia, great to be back. Great for, all of your listeners as well. Great to reconnect, here in the new year, time of recording. So, might be a little bit too late to say Happy New Year, but regardless, Happy New Year to everybody, yourself and your listeners. Yeah, so my name is Matt Gardiner, as you mentioned, a recovery coach, coming up on my first year, just coming on my first year full time doing it. So that's very exciting for myself. I had been working a job previous for 23 years and I did the big shift last year. So the fear of change thing definitely can tie into that. I'm sure that'll come up. I also do breathwork facilitation as well as sound therapy. So been a great first year for myself. Did my first 3 groups, the 1-month challenges. I had one 90-day challenge group as well. So yeah, just feeling really great and very fortunate to be here with you again today. So thank you.
That is so awesome. And I love it because, as a recovery coach, like we all get to serve people in different fashions, right? I get a lot of questions about turning leaves. Is it a group coaching practice? And this and that. And I always get to say, no, mine is not. Sure, we offer a group, but and yes, we're online. However, right, like we literally have online for the fact that we work with people all across the US and Canada. And it's online in the sense that all of the lessons are pre-recorded. And when I say lessons, I mean the psychological skill sets, tactics, methods and modalities that we utilize are all pre-recorded, but that's, to save our elite private clients money, right?
Yeah.
Because if we have to add in 2 or 3 sessions a week for teaching, right, that it becomes difficult. But we do also have a group, just so that people can have that sense of community if they choose. It's optional, but otherwise we are very much that hands-on, one-on-one, not a one-to-many feeling. But I know that so many coaches and so many people have that community where that group feel like really works well. Anyway, we don't need to get into the different methods and modalities, because here's the deal, Matt, this is what's been resonating in me. And I know we talked a little bit back in the waiting room, but I was thinking a whole lot lately, about that fear at the beginning of before we even step into any kind of a life recovery journey. And I like to refer to it as a life recovery journey, not just recovery, because to me that just can seem a little bit shallow when I look at some of the things that are necessary. Anyway, so if I look at, that fear and what held me back so many times, because my recovery journey is very multi-layered and, different years for different things and, yada, yada. But if I look back, right, like that fear of change, right? Like one of the biggest, scariest things for me was in my recovery from eating disorders, right? Like the second I stepped into healing, it became noticeable. And then I had to start having those uncomfortable conversations, right? Because, moving into a healthy weight and all of those changes, right, really made a difference. And then the same with, my relationship with alcohol. There was this, wow, because for me it was physiological and it really didn't look any different to my family on the outside. And the actual thing that was said to me when I raised my hand and said, I need to go to a medical detox. And what was said back to me was, well, why
Right.
now?
Right.
Like, why now? So then I had to have this uncomfortable conversation of something that had been growing inside of me for 5 years. Right now, I drank for over 30, but this was just that last 5 years where some prescription medication in combination with my low-level daily drinking, alcohol addiction, because 3 to 6 beers a day still equates to an alcohol addiction, right? Like,
Yeah.
even though I wasn't, running around or passed out on the couch and not taking care of my family, right? Like, but I had to fess up. I had to own that this thing had been growing inside of me for the last 5 years, and that there was a lot of secrets, around that, because there was that those secrets, and so that stepping out. And I don't know if you have anything similar to that, where there was that, oh God, if I raise my hand or if I say something, like now everybody's going to know my secrets.
100%. Yeah. Like that resonates big time. That's a big thing in my family, like on both sides of my family, just drinking in general, specifically the amount that, folks were drinking was very much a secret, and you find this out later on, or they get caught in the act or whatever it may be, lots of hiding alcohol around the house, so that was very much tied in with it. So when it came time for me, there was definitely that extra layer of like secrecy that's like, intertwined in with the actual shame and the seemingly this feeling of failure on my end of like having to put my hand up. The concern, I think, for me initially was wondering, and you touched on it, what other people are going to think. I thought a lot of like external. I was worried about externally what my job was going to think. And then, the people that I was managing were going, how could they possibly take leadership from, see me as a leader after I've, been this colossal failure. Right. And, worth mentioning, on my side of it, it was like literally the exact opposite of how I thought it would go. I thought I'd speak to my manager, my store manager at the time, like totally alpha male, right? And I was like, this guy's going to think I'm so weak and I'm vulnerable, and who knows, I might get fired, right? So absolutely, it was very frightening. And I thought I had done a good job protecting my secret of how much I was drinking, because I was very much the person that would have what I perceived as a controlled amount, 2 or 3 beer at a party. And then as soon as I got home, I'm like, now I can let my hair down. Now I can have a case in the next 2 hours. And you know what I mean? And in the secrecy, in that secrecy and that safety as I perceived it at the time. Right. So yeah, very much resonate with what you're saying.
Yeah. And, I think that's a big piece of it for everybody is if I, what am I going to say at the next business luncheon? What am I going to say at the next whatever, right? Like retreat. What am I going to say at the next family gathering? Is anybody going to notice? Or what are people going to say? Are they going to judge me? Are they going to pressure me? What is that going to look like? How are my friendships going to look, feel, be like? I can't even imagine, how am I going to go for the girl weekends? How am I
Mm,
going to go, to any bachelor party? How am I going to, do any of these things that everybody in my circle does?
hmm.
And then, so then there's that fear, like what's going to happen on a social level? How will I ever, you know, um, unwind at the end of a stressful day? Like my job is
Right.
just so stressful. I don't
Yeah.
use this for anything else other than to wind down.
Right.
And and we're just, you know, continuing the madness, right? By
Mhm.
just not wanting to explore what it might look like, feel like, be like
Yeah,
if we change it.
that's right. Yeah.
There's, I think if we look at it, and I'm sure you went back to your job after becoming sober, and I'm sure that there were people that, because I know I experienced this, right? Like my husband and I talk about it all the time, and I'm over, I'm 10 plus years out, and it's, you're so much more fun without
Mm,
alcohol. Like you need alcohol, you're like a
yeah.
party inside of yourself, and I
Yeah.
am. This weekend I caught
Mhm.
myself just dancing on the driveway. There was no music, there
Yes.
was nothing happening, right? The sun was just shining for the first time in, I don't know, a month.
Mm, hmm.
And I was just, I don't something was happening in here, but I was having a good
Yeah.
time. But we
Love
all
it.
wonder, right? Like I remember that first business function that I went to with my husband, because there were always, annual, weeks that we would all travel together. They had business meetings, and the spouses would go and do things. I remember that first one of
Mm,
putting my hand over the glass and saying no,
mm.
thank you.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
But having every other year for God knows how many years, had always, been somebody that participated and partaked, and
Yeah. Yes.
probably led the show when it came to, like
Yeah.
tying one on,
Yeah.
and just putting my hand over and saying no, thank you, and learning to navigate that, and realizing that not too many people said a lot.
Yes. Absolutely. I hope you don't mind if I jump in. I had
No, please do.
very much had the same experience. I had honestly in the last, like I'm coming up on 4 years in April. And and granted, there was COVID in there, so I wasn't going out as socializing. There wasn't that opportunity, which in a sense was great for me, at the time, for the beginning of my sobriety, which would have been 2019, but the couple of years after that specifically. But the times that I have gone out, I think I've got like one person, and it was a younger guy, and I know him well enough. He gets to that stage where there's like, you can see it in his eyes. I don't even know if he remembers him goading me on. That's like one person, right? The majority of people are not that overly concerned. In fact, like when I bring some like near beer, I call it, to wherever, a cabin or something, people, they take interest. It looks just like a real beer. Hey, can I have a sip of that? They have a little sip, right? And they're, oh, interesting. It's more like a conversation starter than what I thought potentially would be of like, what are you doing drinking that? Especially being a guy, like I got a little bit worried about, like, am I going to get, not bullied, but the whole machismo thing, right? What
Mhm.
happened to you? And like that didn't happen. Like I say, there's a smattering of it, but a tiny percentage of what I projected that it was going to be. Right inside, I'm like, oh man, somebody's gonna be so disappointed in me, and like they're gonna want the old Matt back and all that. And it was, again, in fact, quite the opposite. Everybody's like, hey, I'm really proud of you. Like, I didn't realize you had a problem, again, from the secrecy and such,
Mhm.
and then to come out, and it just feels so much more congruent and right and aligned with me, and then to have that reflected back is just so beautiful, right? And when you're talking about the theme of one of our topics today, fear of change, I had that fear placed to myself, and I was projecting it on other people, and then for it to get reflected back with such love and understanding, it then started making me look at myself with love and understanding, and it just really snowballed from there. So yeah, quite an experience, though, I'll tell you.
Yeah. I think, that fear of change, which is, in my world, the fear of learning something new, right?
Sure.
So, because to me, I just told myself, gosh, if you just, let go of that fear, you might learn something new,
Mm.
and
Hmm.
have a new appreciation or a new experience or whatever. So that allowed me to let go of my old ways, because I could look at that and say, like, I'm tired. I'm tired of my Saturdays ending in irritation and agitation, right? Because it's Saturday. We're gonna lay in the pool. We're gonna hang out. We're gonna reconnect, and we start having a few cocktails while we're, beers or whatever, while we're laying in the pool. And then, my husband, who's a normie, right? Like, he could just like get out and stop and like move on, and I would continue and be
Right.
moving on, right? Like, I'd still do things, but then, it would just still continue on, and it would just feel so gross by the end of the day. By the end of the day, I was just so, ugh. And then, with the anxiety the next day, I'm here to tell y'all, when you talk about anxiety and your relationship with alcohol, and I have this conversation with people all the time, is you need to make that association. Because when you do a weekend of heavy drinking, and then Monday, Tuesday, there's a lot of anxiety, or even Saturday morning after a Friday night drinking, that then you're like, oh, the anxiety, it's from the alcohol. The anxiety will subside. And I have generalized anxiety disorder, but can manage it because I don't have all of this other crap that I'm putting in my body that exacerbates it. And so, like, when we go out for say a weekend, whatever, vacation, celebration, for my drinking clients, right, that are learning to manage or change the relationship with it, I tell them, you know what you're signing up for, right? Like, you haven't had a drink in months, and now you want to go and do this. You're signing up for a good week to follow it, filled with all of that anxiety and discomfort that you were originally seeking to remove from your life. Just so you get to make that choice. When you get there, you have to make that choice. I am choosing the anxiety and discomfort for a week because it's worth it to me to drink it up with my buddies this weekend. Right? Like, it's that decision. So when we have that fear of change, it's really like, how are my relationships going to be different? And I think, and it's also, I fear of, will I like myself? Right? Will I like me? I have social anxiety. I have this, I have that. Alcohol does this for me. No, it really doesn't. You just think it. That's the story you're telling yourself, right?
Yeah, definitely. I had that a lot, like, I played in a band for my whole life. So, and, playing in a band is one of the only, jobs that I can think of that actually encourage you to drink on the job, right? You show up, they're like, here's a beer in your hand. I'm like, okay, I'll be like half in the bag before we even go on there. Like, we're going on at 11 p.m. They got all this, like, a tub of beer that you can get into, right? So at the time I thought this was great, right? And that, as you said, like, I thought that was helping me become this social person. And oftentimes just not necessarily remembering what I'm saying, or just saying things that afterwards I'd be like, oh man, I can't believe and then worrying, did I spend enough time with people and such, and just not being sharp to the point that, the next day I would do a lot of like, oh shoot, like, what did I do? What did I not do? Who did I not say? I mean, all that, like, that spiral. Right. So, yeah, it's interesting, it's all these things that I thought alcohol was helping me from the time I was 16, very shy kid, was helping me go to these parties and talk to the girls that I thought were cute, that I was too shy around before, and here I am, turned 40, and I'm learning how to properly do these things now. And that was all based on like the fear of change, or the fear of putting myself out there, based back into like my teenage years, right? So it's, there's undeveloped sides of me that I'm embracing now and allowing to come up, instead of like pushing them down or shaming them away, or thinking that it's some kind of character defect on me. I'm saying, no, come to the party. I'm allowed to feel uncomfortable. There's a good chance that other people at the party also feel uncomfortable, getting that in my head as well, and realizing it's just not being so in my head about it, remembering to breathe a lot deeper, slowing down when I'm speaking quickly, just various things that are reminding me, how to, facilitate that change in myself and in my relationships. But yeah, definitely there was, I was using alcohol to get myself out there, so to speak. So here I am 20 years down the road going, oh shoot, if I had just been working on this, when I was 16, but this is my journey. So, there's always a little bit of that too, where like, dang, if things have been different, but honestly, looking back on it, I wouldn't change anything. I really enjoy my life and where I am as well. But yeah, it's definitely interesting to reflect back, isn't it?
It is. I wonder if you noticed, because I noticed this quite rapidly as I reintegrated in my life. Because I started drinking when I was 12, and I had different seasons that looked differently with my alcoholism, right? Some that were, a whole lot what we would call higher severity, right? And because it was a lot of, trauma induced drinking, from trauma,
Yeah.
from trauma.
Yeah. Yeah.
And because I learned the coping behavior, right? I learned the coping skill of, picking up at an early age, so from 12 to, I'm going to say about 25, right? Like I had ups and downs and, just looked differently. And I would have bouts of sobriety, and then, I would kind of ease back in or whatever. Anyway, so I had a lot of different seasons, but from, 25 on, 26 on, it was, I don't know, whatever, steady Eddie alcoholism, right? Like 3 to 6 beers with the occasional, like vacation wingding. But what I realized is that when I when I quit drinking, I realized that a whole lot less people drank as heavy as I did that I thought were drinking right with me. Does
Oh,
that
wow.
make sense?
It totally
Right?
does.
Like,
Yeah.
so the
Yeah.
people I was around and I was drinking heavy, and I would be, again, those, like, oh, I shared too much, right? Those
Yes.
days,
Yeah.
like, oh, I shared too much.
Yes.
But thinking like that everybody was drinking up here with me, and
Yeah.
maybe they were, but as soon as I stopped, they like super normal or hardly drink at all, or right. I remembered you being a much heavier drinker. And they're like, no. I'm like, oh, it's all in my
Yeah.
head. Right. So a
Right.
lot of
Right.
that fear also could potentially be, you know, um, self-made, like your own self-serving perception of that.
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
so, take a serious look at your social circle and see, like, you're the only one ordering 4 drinks when you go out and everybody else is having 1, maybe 2, and maybe
Right.
not finishing that second one. Because if
Yeah.
you're the only one that's having 4, like, your friends are going to be fine with you stopping. I guarantee it.
Right. Yeah.
They're going to be
Very
like,
well put.
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. We could stay at the restaurant a little longer.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's another, yeah, we're talking like perception. Like I've always liked the it's not an analogy. What is it where there's like, so each letter stands for something. So fear,
Oh,
false evidence appearing real,
yeah.
that whole thing. I'm like, I think that's really clever. Like I've always liked that. It's one of the lessons that I have in my program. Just the idea of, like you said, like this perception, and it really feeds in these stories that really feed into that, like uncertainty, the anxiety, the fear, and so forth. And oftentimes you look at it and you're like, oh, I was like way off base. You know what I mean? Like I was way more nervous or anxious, or I just completely remembered that differently. Like you said, I remember this person like going drink for drink with me. And then when you actually get a clear moment to sort of, get that 60-foot look, I'm like, oh no, I was remembering that. Right. I was creating that story, so yeah, that's a big part of it too. Right.
It is. And I think, again, that fear is self-induced. When we look at, like, what am I really afraid of? What am I really afraid of? Because what is that, what is that discomfort? And I'm gonna share something that I know to be true now, that I value so much, because there was such a period of time in my life where the alcohol helped me, because I felt very dismissed. I felt very unseen, very unheard, and valued, right? Like, just kind of, and it was all stemming from the past, and it all came from somebody else's belief. something that I adopted and carried myself around. Right. So, there was all of this. So now what I realize is, one, that I've, quite easily, I might add, healed up all of those things, like all of those other people's things that I took on
Yeah.
and like kind of owned, for myself. Because, if you grow up and you hear like nobody wants to hear what you have to say, like it kind of sinks in after a while. Right. But,
Yeah.
so, I learned that, what I do, my thoughts, my feelings, my emotions, my opinions, my beliefs, my needs, wants, dreams, desires are very valuable. They do have a valid purpose, and they are worth being seen, heard, experienced by me and by some others. So this is my roundabout way of circling back to that fear of, maybe being uncomfortable in a group of people, or, being uncomfortable, whatever that is, what it really allows to happen. And Matt, I don't know if you've experienced this already or not, is that we become very insightful and very intuitive, and we can actually feel the vibrations of the room, and it allows us to not spend unnecessary time with people that aren't genuine in their motives for having a relationship with us, or whatever, or you know what, they're just too closed off, too judgy. Like, I don't surround myself with people that stand in that stance of a judger. Like, if you're going to judge me based on how I look on the outside, like, you're too shallow of a person. I'm not spending any of my kind, wonderful energy on you. Like, I'm just not. If you're not willing to see the insightful, intelligent, intriguing being that I am, then I don't have time for you. Right.
100%. Yeah.
So these are the shifts. These are the things that we get to let go of, like that fear of judgment. Like, I don't care. Like, if I go someplace, like I'll be sitting at the pool in Cabo, and I'm like, hey, can you bring me a shot of lime juice and some soda water? Like, that's my jam.
Ooh, yeah.
Right. Well, they don't, it's basically ordering a virgin mojito, but it's cheaper to order a little bit of lime juice and some soda water. Then, because if you order the virgin drink, then they're paying for the drink just minus the alcohol. Anyway.
That's so funny. You got it worked out.
I got it all figured out, right?
Yeah.
Anything with soda water, right?
Right. Yeah. 100%.
But we get to feel completely wonderful just being us and not needing to be altered. I don't know. Have you experienced anything like that?
Definitely. That's a big part of, I'd say the last 18 months, 2 years for myself specifically. Like, I did get into a lot of the self-development and counseling and different coaches and such over the years, but specifically the last, I'd say, year and a half or 2 years, I've been doing a lot of those deep dives into what you said, like really getting into like what I was numbing, like why was I numbing in the first place, right? It was one thing to keep the drink out of my hand. That was like the triage, if you will. That's step one, of course. And replacing that with a better habit, I was totally fine with that. Started going and working out, yoga, meditation, all these things. But there was still, okay, what is inside of me? Because what I did, Tricia, was like, I had a pattern of, and you were kind of talking about this, I still have this like trauma. And I found a way to continue to push that down. And what I did with that was another conditioned pattern from my childhood, that of achiever, right? So for me to feel conditionally accept myself and to think that I'm worth anything to you or to whoever else I'm talking to, I have to be like, here, like I've done all of this, I'm working on this, I had to leave with these achievements or lead with these achievements. And I felt the need to always be crossing things off a to-do list, right? And, to go back to the very beginning of our conversation, you said like the life recovery journey. I'm getting a lot more into like the process, the journey, as opposed to these like destinations that will give me the dopamine rush that perhaps drinking had. It was a very similar pattern. It was without drinking, but I was still doing this thing to numb myself, that being the achiever. So really doing a deep dive into that. And then, getting into this ability to, like you say, show up as my authentic self. And my authentic self can be sad sometimes. My authentic self can be lonely sometimes. That's okay. There's removing this idea of like a hierarchy of emotions, like sad is bad, or, depressed is, I mean, sustained sadness. I mean, there could be something to be, like we talked about, putting your hand up. But for me to feel sad for an afternoon is great. It's welcomed. I'm liking that now, sitting with it, because, sad is telling me something. There was something in there that I was not welcoming in myself that I am welcoming now. And that's part of the, the big like aha moments that I've been having, like getting out of that stage of this is coming up, this feeling, sadness, whatever it is. Oh, better pick up my phone and text somebody. And then, that'll just push the feeling down and I'll feel like I've achieved for that 5 seconds. Right. So really getting into that and realizing, allowing whatever comes up, and there's different layers that are coming up. I'm sure there's some, these traumas from like my childhood that like I'm slowly walking myself back into. I'm definitely remembering things in my, early 20s, my teenage years that have echoed into my adulthood. And I imagine the more of this inner work that I'm doing, I'll get further back into it. And then finally I'll be like, and I am having a few of those, like when I was 8, and you talked about, it's a big one for me, is the, in group setting, like being embarrassed in front of a group. Oh man, when I was younger, I would rather just die. Like I would go beat red. I want to run out of the room. Oh goodness.
No.
Yeah. Big fear of mine, that still echoes. Like I mentioned earlier with the breathing and such, I've been able to confront it and be curious about it as opposed to shy away from it. The fear of change theme coming up again. Yeah, but that's definitely how it's shown up for me in the last few years. It's such an important topic, getting past the mechanics of the actual drinking, and then getting into that deep work about why you were drinking in the first place, the traumas and different things, right? So very important topics for sure.
Absolutely. I'm going to piggyback on you here for just a brief minute before we wrap up, because I know everybody's attention span these days are more into that 30 minutes. But I think it's really important to touch on it. Of course, everybody's journey is their own, and I want everybody to understand that, right? This is your life too. It gets to look, feel, be however you want it to. You get to choose, and that is, your recovery journey is no exception to that.
Mm-hmm.
Find where you fit, find where speaks your language, find where you find that whole gut, heart, brain, whatever, full body connection. But I want to talk really quick because it's super important to me that people understand that living without habits fixes everything. And I'm talking good habits to bad habits. And it's not that we can't have those things, right? Because they're good. Like I still want you to exercise. I still want you to eat well. I still want you to go to church and I want you to pray, but I want you to have those things in a fashion that is non-habitual. Habits are impulsive action without much thought. So think about that as you're telling yourself, oh, I'm going to create new habits in my life. So if you're a person that, tends to operate and function around habits, whatever they are, healthy or otherwise, right? Like you and I need to have a very big conversation, because I can show you how you can have all of the things that you love, leave the things that aren't serving you anymore, and create a lifestyle that is non-habitual. There are just some very specific steps that we have to go through. Some people can go through it more rapidly than others. It just kind of depends, and it takes a conversation because it's a very personal journey. However, we don't want to be, I have to be at this spin class at this time of the day, or my entire day doesn't go well, right? Like if you're that married to the 6 a.m., right? Because life's going to throw wrenches at you for the rest of your life. It is never going to be easy. There's never not going to be something to grieve. There's never not going to be something that's annoying or irritating or agitating. It's all about, whatever, right? You're going to have to get more bendable, flexible, pliable, and resilient in your life. And if you're not willing to do that, you're going to habitually get up and, okay, everybody in AA, please don't hate me. I just want to say this. Okay. You're going to be you're going to be that person that is sitting in the same room, in the same corner, in the same chair 30 years later, right? Like that couldn't be me. I'm like, I want to be of service, but I cannot every day be that repetitious. That guy has been sitting here for 30 years and I love that it kept him sober and I love that it worked for him. right?
Yep.
Notice I said, add, edit, delete, change, shift, more, but hopefully it wasn't a habit for him. Hopefully it was something bendable, flexible, pliable. And, I was just a visitor in the room, right? It was just the story I heard, but it was, what I needed to hear to do my journey differently, right?
Wow.
Like, oh, I
Yeah.
was like, oh no, I can't do that. Maybe
Yes.
he was very flexible. I don't know, right? Like, but
Right.
if you're too regimented with your life and
Yeah.
things are too habitual, you're not going to get the full fulfillment. You're not going to be able to experience a full, true, balanced life. And balance is not home, work, and health. There are 14 categories that create a fully balanced life, and they have to be defined by you, for you, not by a textbook. And anyway, I can't get into all of that. However, I'm going to leave you with that little nugget and really just encourage you to at least explore, how can I have a recovery lifestyle that is bendable, flexible, pliable, and affords me the ability to have resilience and sobriety all at the same time, right? Whatever you're wanting to become sober from, because there's more than just alcohol. There's food, there's shopping, there's people pleasing, codependency. There's all kinds of things that hold us hostage. And there's the gym even, right? Like,
right.
we can, so there's all kinds of things that we can work on, but if you're hiding bottles of alcohol in the back of your closet, or you have them in your gym bag that's in your trunk, or you have candy shoved in the bottom of your purse, well, whatever, if you find that you have hiding spots, you're fearing change and you don't want, it's like, I don't want to pop out of, and be seen. I don't want to be seen as having this problem, like, maybe reaching out and having a conversation with one of us might serve you.
Definitely. Very well put. Very well put. Last thing, I like this comment. I've heard it recently, and I think it rings true with what we're talking about, is like, preferences and habits, it can become a prison at a certain point, right? It's you think that it's like your freedom to choose and all that. And there's a certain point where it really does turn on you and it becomes a limitation, the habits and compulsions, especially when we're talking about, our compulsions to drink or whatever else that it may be. If you really think about that, that has become very much a limiting thing in your life. So that's when that habit, the compulsion or preference becomes the opposite of what you perceived it to be, perhaps when you started it. So very fascinating way of looking at it too.
There's so many different ways that we can dissect.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of my big purposes for not being a one-to-many practice, because it is such, the areas that we're looking at and the areas that we're working on, are such they're unique to each individual being, right?
Yeah, very nuanced. Yeah.
The way that I did it for me in my life is not going to be how the next person that comes through is going to do it. And the person after them is going to be even different, right? Like we have to, it's very finite work, I guess, if you will. I don't know. That's not the word I was looking for, but anyway, wow. Such an amazing, awesome conversation.
Thank you. Yeah.
I really value you, and I love your transparency and your authenticity and your just willingness, right? Just your willingness to come in and have a conversation, and just provide us another opportunity to share with people that may or may not otherwise have heard a message today that would serve them.
Thanks so much, Tricia. And same, reflected back to you. I feel that, and I definitely really appreciate the kind words. And I feel the same about you. Just a quick little, like you were on my show a few months before I was even on your show, and it was just one of those just amazing standout interviews. I'm like, wow. Afterwards, I was like, whew, such great stuff. And for those reasons, you were just so transparent and so much value in what you're saying, and really had done this like massive journey on yourself, and just to be able to withhold all your, or uphold all your relationships, and make such a massive success story of yourself. Incredibly inspiring from, somebody that's a year in. Watch, I'm like, wow, look at what Tricia has done and can do and is continuing to do. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Wow. Anyway, all right, everybody. Absolutely. Again, just reach out, keep following along. Don't suffer in silence. There are people here or anywhere that are absolutely open and willing to help you sit in and move through your uncomfortable. But for now, I'm going to bid you all adieu. We'll talk soon. Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Please make sure and come back every week. We will have a new guest who will sit down and have a deep, real conversation with me about informative, helpful tools and tactics, as well as a guided approach to recovery. You will absolutely walk away with insight and tools that you can use in your day-to-day life. We also have a very special Mastering the Drop episode that comes out once a month, where we have a special guest who shares their recovery journey and what it looks like now. So make sure you're paying attention to the episodes. In fact, go in and subscribe. I'd also like to invite you to go over to www.turningleavesrecovery.com and subscribe to our newsletter so that you can stay up to date with free tools as well as specials. But most of all, make sure to grab a conversation with me. It's completely safe, and it's the best way for me to help point you in the right direction. Have a great day.